Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Financial Marathon Show for this new year, 2026. And we're really happy, to welcome all of you, here in this new show that is really interesting because we'll be talking about the Digital Landlord. So we have now Trevor Wilson, which is the managing partner of Wilson Venture Capital. We will be talk about his company, but also his relation with money. So as you may know already, I'm a French speaker, so forgive me with my accents and anything. But as you know, last year we did a really great show with a lot of listeners all around the world, French listeners, American listeners, even Chinese, Korean, Japanese, who are English speaker also for some. And that was really interesting for us to notice that in the analytics of the show. So we will be continuing this year by providing great quality and great professionals to come to share their stories, share their venture. As you know, I've launched learncorporate.com last year because our aim is to bring personal finance to companies for salary people. Because when you are a salary man, you are really busy and you build for the company, but you forget also to build for yourself. So when something happens in the economy, you lose your job and you lose everything. So we tend to really work now with companies in order to help salary people build some plan B, plan C, plan D, and build actual real wealth finally. So after saying that, I will let Trevor Wilson introduce himself. Hi, Trevor.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. This is really interesting and kind of a first for me. This is the first time I've been on a talk show with a European host. So I'm excited to do this. This is going to be great, by the way. Your English is fantastic. But my name's Trevor Wilson. I'm the managing partner of Wilson Venture Capital. I'm excited to share some experiences with you all today. So I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for your kind words, Trevor. The title of this show is The Digital Landlord. It's a really great business. And we really would like to know how Wilson Venture Capital is scaling online storefronts, and which is a really interesting business for venture capital. So before diving into this, I know we talk a bit a lot, and you told me that you are currently in college and finishing some degrees, if I understood well, and in the same time working in the family company. So how is it this? What is your experience? Working for a VC, being your own boss, and in the same time, studying hard.
Well, I'll say it's definitely unique, and I definitely have a lot of friends. They ask me, how I do it and why I do it. So this is definitely a very interesting question. I will tell you that I have done my fair share of college internships for sure. Um, Looking back in the summer of 2022, I did a summer internship with the National Cyber Forensics Training Alliance. Here in the States, we have public and private sector cybersecurity organizations. So the NCFTA is actually a nonprofit organization that brings three-letter agencies and private companies, big corporate private companies, into one office to partner and work together on cybersecurity issues. So I did an internship with them. I learned a lot. Learned a lot about cyber policy, specifically NIST standards, things like that. And then up till today, I'm actually doing a student work study program part time through a company called Dark Tower. They're a great cyber intelligence firm. I work with some Fortune 500 clients there and kind of share my insight and experience with open source intelligence and what we see in the world of cybercrime. Um, but this is kind of something that, my dad and I have been talking about for a long time. Since I was in high school. I know we're going to get into some of the subsidiary companies later on in the show and things like that. But back in the early 2000s, my dad registered a domain name, and it was yourwebplace.com. And he always had a vision for starting a web development company, or a company that can help uh, people get their ideas online. This is kind of during the dot-com bubble, so this was a new and upcoming thing that he did. And ever since then, he kind of knew in the back of his head that as I got older, he wanted to partner with me and build a company. I think we're really building something special here. Definitely unique, route for me, being, a college student graduating this spring from my undergraduate, but it's pretty neat, and I'm excited to keep up with it.
That's a really interesting story that you're sharing with us. And I was a little curious, to know how do you manage your the agenda between, your studies, your internship, and this actual work, which is really it's really demanding, as I can say like this.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's a lot of work, and it just really takes dedication. I think it takes faith. And I think it takes a lot of trust in yourself. I mean, there are nights, where, friends are going out to party and do fun things. And sometimes I have to, stay back and stay at my desk and, be responsible in that way. So not that I don't have my time for socialization and fun in college and things like that. But obviously, it just takes discipline to have your priorities in order. And obviously, I'm prioritizing my academics. I'm prioritizing my work. I'm prioritizing my relationship, with my church family and things like that. But I just think it takes discipline. If you have enough discipline, you can really do anything you put your mind.
Yeah, so I think it's really not common, to have you people working that hard, sharing something big like you are doing in your business, and it really surprised me, and I'm kind of admirative, for your work and for your dedication for that. So I know that you are pursuing cybersecurity studies, and the cybersecurity is is a really important domain, and a lot of companies here in France are suffering from cybersecurity threats. 2 weeks ago, we had the French national installation that been ripped off all its data, and everyone that is in the jungle is online in the wild. So I think the cybersecurity is a really a great important domain, and in the future to come, we have a lot more of threats
Mhm.
with AI, or so, because they are using it, to be more precise and more
Mhm.
efficient. So, what is your thought around this sector? And do you advise some other people to pursue some studies in cybersecurity? Is there again some place to fill?
Yeah, so obviously you briefly mentioned my father. My father is the chief information officer. Besides being partner, obviously, at Wilson Venture Capital, he is chief information officer and acting chief information security officer. So he oversees all IT and cybersecurity operations for a mid-major university here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the states. So I kind of, got my background from him in that sense. Growing up, he always taught me about how cybersecurity is a very demanding field, but there's a lot of job opportunities, and it's such a new thing that companies need to catch up with, that they are looking for experts all over the place, and they'll pull experts from all over the world to get good advice on proper cybersecurity practices and things like that. Um, I will tell you, unfortunately, well, fortunately for me, but unfortunately for others, maybe. If it wasn't for my father, I really would have never thought about cybersecurity, because I think in education and even throughout high school, guidance counselors are there, and they'll tell you about certain fields you can get into, and you hear the general things: business, finance, healthcare. But cybersecurity is so new that I don't think in the K through 12 education system, there's not enough awareness about how many cybersecurity jobs there are. So, I mean, for anybody listening to the show, If you're a young person, even if you're in college, it's not too late to pursue, a degree or a major, or even a minor in cybersecurity. I think it will take you a long way. And as this world becomes more technologically advanced in every single field, cybersecurity degree is so universal because whether it's finance, whether it's healthcare, whether it's basically any critical infrastructure sector, government, anything you can think of in this world, you need cybersecurity measures in place. So it's kind of a universal degree that you can have, and you can have a lot of different career routes with it. So I definitely encourage individuals who are, curious about what they want to do, as they grow up, to definitely consider cybersecurity as a field to go into for sure.
Yeah. So, do you see it being threatened by layoffs? Because we saw a lot of layoffs happening, last year and even before last year. I saw something on Reddit. Someone said 13 million Americans lost their job just last year because of layoffs. Do you think the cybersecurity can be fragile with the AI breaking everything?
Well, I'll tell you, I kind of like to use this analogy, and it's so simple, but it's so true, I think, when it comes to the field. So, I don't know if you've ever seen Charlie or the Chocolate Factory, the Johnny Depp version. Basically, what happens is the dad in the movie gets laid off from working at the factory, working at the toothpaste factory, because his job is replaced by a robot. Um, at the end of the movie, he actually gets reemployed by the same factory as the technician who fixes the robot that originally replaced his job. So I kind of like to compare that, to cybersecurity. I think at first we might see some, extreme layoffs in cybersecurity analysis and these other jobs that can be at first automated by AI. But I think there is a human factor that goes into it that you always need a human being to obviously develop these, artificial intelligence tools, but also to maintain them because they can get, with artificial intelligence, it's trained to think like a human being, but only to a certain extent. It doesn't really have morality or rationale. So I think that at first, like I said, we're going to see some layoffs, unfortunately, but I think these jobs will come back as we become more automated as a business society because, like I said, you're going to need more people in information technology and even cybersecurity to maintain or to develop and maintain these tools and retain them. So I think at the end of the day, I actually think it's going to create more jobs. Also, you're going to have third-party companies developing cybersecurity tools that weren't even companies before. They'll be hiring sales reps, developers, and things like that. I think it's actually, at the end of the day, big picture, long term, going to create more jobs.
So, if you don't mind, I would like to dive in with some venture capital. So,
For
I
sure.
really want to understand what is the first job of Wilson Venture Capital? What's the aim of this company, first of
hmm
all?
Why did we name it Wilson Venture Capital? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so basically, we wanted funny story actually. We started our company in the state of Pennsylvania here. And on the Department of State's website, when you're starting a company, um, you have to go through like a business domain search where you have to basically type in a company name. And if somebody else doesn't own that company name, then you can register your company with articles of incorporation. So believe it or not, Wilson Venture Capital is actually not our first pick. We actually had it as Wilson Enterprises. And come to find out that somebody else in the state of Pennsylvania, I don't know who, owns the company name Wilson Enterprises. So we actually look to Wilson Venture Capital. And the reason we call ourselves a venture capital firm is not, that we do necessarily, we do, traditional venture capital things. But that's not what is really unique about us. What's unique about us is we are actually allocating a lot of our financial assets to our own subsidiary companies. So instead of, focusing on investing into other startup companies, we are allocating our resources to invest into our own startup companies. And I know, maybe, a little bit later in the show, we'll go into the web development services that we're going to be offering, and that kind of attributes to the title of this show here, the Digital Landlord, because I think it's a really interesting and unique perspective that not a lot of venture capital companies are doing. They're investing in other startups, which is great. I love it. It's a fantastic mission. But I think if they look to themselves and they kind of have more confidence and faith in themselves, that instead of looking to other people to develop the next big thing, develop it yourself and allocate your resources there. Fiscally, that's very responsible too. So, yes.
So I think that's really a great idea. Instead of investing in on other people ventures,
Mhm.
just develop it yourself by making some subsidiaries on different subjects. Right now, Where's on venture capital? How many subsidiaries?
We have two subsidiaries.
Two.
Um,
Okay.
yep, two. And actually, the second one is currently in the process of being developed, but the first one is going to be tied to that yourwebplace.com. Like I said, and eventually we're going to officially register a DBA for that. Right now, we're just offering web development services through the parent company, Wilson Venture Capital. But going forward, I mean, and I could see this being a very realistic possibility because my father and I have come up with a lot of great ideas and been consulting with a lot of professionals about these ideas. By Q4 2026, we are hoping possibly four subsidiaries. So it will be very good and a big mission ahead of us, but we're excited.
Well, that's really exciting. So can you talk more about the new service of web development for small businesses that you are creating right now?
Absolutely. So, web development is something that I feel like a lot of people are getting on board with, but the bigger companies that can, afford to retain these huge firms, are getting websites. So, what I found is that an there is an extremely silent population of businesses here in the United States that are underdeveloped with their online presence. And I think that small businesses, just as much as large corporate companies, have the right, to get their information and services out on the internet. So, after talking with my father a lot, we both have especially him, you know, uh, expertise in information technology and web development, software development, things like that. So, I feel like this is a very unique opportunity for us to kind of dive into that field of small businesses who need web development services. And the unique thing is that large corporate companies have the assets and, financial well-being in a way to hire their own web developers in-house, which makes it very convenient for them. For small businesses, unfortunately, what they have to do is, if they are interested or are able to, get a website or have the funds to actually have a website, they have to call a lot of out of state or even out of the country individuals to come offer these web development services to them. See, with us, and I'll dive into it a little bit later with you, but we're going to have sales representatives, boots on the ground, going in person and talking to these small businesses about web development services that we can offer them. So not only are we going to be offering web development services at an affordable price for small businesses, we're also going to be giving them kind of a sense of personal touch that they actually can have somebody to talk to, and that my line is always open. So instead of talking to a call center representative about a change that you want to make on your website, you can call me, call the developer himself, and get those changes executed. So I just think this is a field that's very overlooked, and everybody thinks that web development is very inflated, and that is true. The field of development is inflated for large corporate companies, but small businesses need that online presence too, and I think that's where we're going to come into play.
So, what's your thoughts on vibe coding? Because I've listened online and in person a lot of clients that are turning down some projects, focusing on doing it indoor by themselves. A client thinking that they can do development services by themselves because of AI and all of that. Um, do you think that is a threat for the service?
Well, I think that are you speaking to like people developing their own websites in house instead of like developing it themselves versus outsourcing it to a different company?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that is good to a certain extent. I know there's a lot of platforms out there like Wix that allow you, and Google sites that allow you to, build websites yourself easily, and those are good if you want, basic things. But I think small business owners have a lot to offer, and they have a lot more to offer than just basic. That a lot more to offer than what just basic web development services can give them. Like I said, as we roll out this web development stuff, we're professionals. We've done web development for years for certain projects that we've done, and sometimes, like for instance, Google Sites does not have a tool where somebody can do online ordering of products. See, with our services, we'll be able to offer that. We're also working on partnering currently, and the listeners of the show right now will be the first to hear this from us because I haven't released a press release on this or anything like that yet. But we will also be probably partnering with DoorDash in the future. And we will be able to get small businesses who are restaurants their menu items online, where businesses can put their items online and the customers can get those items shipped right to their house. So it could really lead to a potential competition to places like Walmart.com, where people go on Walmart.com and order items. Get them from a small business instead. Using DoorDash. And I think people with DoorDash don't understand uh, how widespread DoorDash's capabilities actually are. They're not just for food delivering, they're also for grocery delivering, health and beauty products delivering. So a lot of different things we're looking into, but to go back to the question, I think that if a business is mature enough to realize that they need highly sophisticated web development services for the business that I'm sure they've taken years to develop and create, they should definitely go with a developer and a company like us. That's what I would say.
So will you also serve some small businesses which are abroad or something like this in other countries?
That's something we look to do in the future. Currently, we're going to be starting up with a 1099 sales rep program. So for tax purposes, our sales representatives are really only allowed to sell within the United States. But it really definitely wouldn't hurt. And this is something that this is kind of like our test trial here in the States. If it goes really well, I definitely in the foreseeable future think talking with some attorneys about how legally we could sell web development services into other countries, how that would work out. I think that would be very beneficial to the clients in those other countries, but also to us. So yes, definitely. Like I said, if this test trial goes really well here in the States, that is something I definitely want to look into for sure. It's a very good question.
What can you say? What can you say? To business people like a small business owners that don't see the value of a digital storefront presence now
Hmm.
in 2026. So because sometimes I argue with people like a small business owner by saying to them that you should put your words outside. Like,
Hmm.
the world needs to know what you're building, what you're doing. But a lot of them sometimes just rely on hands by hands, on mouth to ears. So, what can you say to this kind of population of business that are not seeing a value on building the digital storefront presence?
Yeah. So what I would say is that as my generation, my generation, we were raised on computers. It's very hard for me to remember a life without the iPhone, where you could go on your phone and access the internet. So as my generation is becoming older in the sense that we're starting to buy houses, we're starting to buy cars, we're starting to rent apartments and all of these things, we are now beginning to rely on small businesses for services that we need as adults. And you can ask 100 people my age, if you just bought a house and you need your gutters cleaned, how do you find somebody to clean
Yeah,
your gutters? And I guarantee you,
yeah.
99 out of 100 people are going to say that they will go on Google and type gutter cleaning services near me. And that is it. So if your business does not have an online presence with proper search engine optimization, and that's something that we're going to be offering, search engine optimization, um, you know, you know, potential clients are not going to find you. And the days of the phone book are over. I mean, even, my grandparents, when they want to like order a pizza or something like that, or, order takeout food or delivery, they don't even use the phone book anymore. And I'm, talking about my grandparents here. If they're not using a phone book anymore, how would, they expect, my generation to do so? So to business owners that do not yet have a website, I would hope that, you would retain, Wilson Venture Capital Services, to promote your products. But even if you choose not to, I think it's extremely imperative for you to get an online presence, to get a website, and you got to get your voice out there, because if you don't do that, I think slowly, it won't be a drastic change, but slowly you might start to fall behind in sales. So I think it's very important.
Do you think that digital storefront is a good investment for business? I think for
I
business owners.
do. I do, and especially I was looking at some studies, a kind of a meta analysis that people were doing with DoorDash, clients of DoorDash, and they're not even having their own websites; they're just putting their products on DoorDash. And some of these, restaurants saw sales, spike in these big cities, 50 to 60%. I mean, that's a drastic change in sales and revenue. And I think, those studies come to show you that, online ordering is everything, online presence is everything, and digital storefronts, I think, are the future of this country. I mean, look at what Amazon has done. I mean, they were such a small company, only in the late '90s, early 2000s. Here we are, 25 years later, which seems like a long time, but for a company to go from Jeff Bezos's garage to plants and facilities and thousands of employees all around the world. I mean, it's extremely impressive, and I think we should take that model. And small businesses should realize that if they're not, jumping on the bandwagon of, digital storefronts and getting their business out on the web, I think they might fall behind in that aspect. So, yes, for sure, I think it is very, very important.
So that's really quite interesting. As you explained, and we were talking before recording about VC, traditional VC, and I understood that the way you are VCing is to invest first in your business and creating subsidiaries, that will be strong enough, to earn revenue.
Mhm.
Most of people think that there is a big entry barrier, to get into the VC world. Do you think it's much more easy, to go to the route of you create your own microphone or just apply to some jobs on the VC side? Because when the company posts a VC job offer, it's full of people. So
Yes.
do you think it's much more easy, to go to launch your microphone yourself, growing yourself, than going to the job?
Well, I'll tell you, it kind of depends on what field you're in. Um, so for instance, like I've said, with my father has a extensive background in higher education leadership and information technology, and my background comes from cybersecurity, and we got into venture capital. Um, the thing with it is that if you come from a background of finance experience, it might be difficult for you, because in that sense it might be easier to go work for a larger venture capital firm at first and work your way up the ranks. But if you come from a background of a specialty that's not necessarily finance related exactly, I don't think it's very difficult, to start your microfund. And what I think you have to do, and I think this is a strategy that, we're starting, and I really haven't seen any other VC firm do what we've done, where we are investing in our own subsidiary companies. And I think if you have that specialty, it is easier for you to invest in yourself and invest in a product that you want to develop first than necessarily going to get the degree in finance, then going to work for a large VC firm, or even just starting it up. Because when you are investing in your own subsidiaries, you do not need as much cash on hand as you would need if you were investing in all these other little companies all around the world. And I'll tell you what's good about venture capital is I heard a multi-millionaire venture capitalist, say this on an interview one time. He said that the key to venture capital is never giving up because you'll invest in 10 companies and nine of them will fail, but the one that goes big will make up for all the losses of those other nine. And I think that's a very important, approach to even take into account when you are developing your own subsidiary companies, because we're not 100% sure. I can't predict the future. It's all kind of a part of God's plan, but there will be businesses, ideas that my dad and I will throw a lot of time and resources into, and it might not work out the way we want them to. But the good thing with VC is you try and you try and try again until something really makes it big, and then you kind of go with that. So I do think that for people that are specialists, non-finance based specialists, it is a good opportunity for you to kind of start up your own microfund venture capital firm for sure.
That's really interesting, and you said something that really caught a lot of my attention too, is that you tried a lot of things with your dad, and some things failed, some things worked out. What I see today in our generation is that when people, start to go into the business, they always think it's just a win-win every time,
Hmm.
and they tend to live really bad when they just experience some failure.
Hmm.
And as I can see, you have a really great business acumen. And what kind of a piece of advice you can share to the people who are experiencing maybe failure into the business, who launched a first venture, failed, and all of that? So because in the common mind of people, people think when you launch a business, it always needs to succeed. But sometimes it can take 4 years, 5 years,
Hmm.
even 10 years to be profitable sometimes.
Hmm.
So what's your
Absolutely.
piece of advice on
Well, and I'm not sure, how familiar you are with the sport of baseball, but here in the United States, baseball is pretty much everything to America. And Hall of Fame batters usually get on base about 3 out of every 10 times. And I played baseball growing up. I played baseball in college even. And I think this is a really interesting approach because I had a coach tell me one time that, if you are only successful 3 out of every 10 times and you're failing, 7 out of 10 times, those 3 out of 10 times will get you into the Hall of Fame. The best of the best baseball players to ever walk this earth, for the most part, got a hit about 3 out of every 10 at bats. So that's 70% failure rate. And that's for the best of the best in the world. That's not even the guys that are just getting paid millions to do what they do. Um, I think that approach is really interesting because it shows you can't give up. Sometimes you'll get in a slump with business. Sometimes over and over and over and over again, you'll have failure. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Seuss. He wrote kids books, all around the world. Extremely extremely influential author. And I heard, went to, you know, showed samples of his projects to 30 different publishers before he got one publisher to roll the dice and offer him a deal to publish books. I think business and life in general is all about trying and trying and trying again until you succeed. You look at, you know, these successful business people all around the world and you read their resumes, their first endeavor wasn't the one that, went big for them. I'll tell you that. So I think it's all about discipline. It's all about determination. It's all about putting your head down and realizing that you're going to fail and realizing that failure is only education. Failure is not a personal reflection of how much effort you put into a project. And I am a firm believer that, you can do all things through Christ. Um, and, if you have faith and you have belief and you have determination and grit, you can succeed. It just might take longer than everybody else, or it might be shorter than everybody else for the amount of time it takes. But I'm very confident that, like I said, if somebody's disciplined enough, they can be very successful.
And also when I talk to some people online or real life, launching a business, makes them scared. Plus on the sales side, because they tend to be afraid, to get objection. And I guess you already did some sales stuff, in your business. You need to talk to people. You
Absolutely.
need to create relationships with people also. How do you handle all of these sales things now, um, emotionally, mentally? What does it look like for you?
Well, it definitely takes a lot of mental health for sure. You really have to. It takes something deep down. And as I, started this company with my father, this has become more of an educational experience for me than it has a business experience. In the sense that I have definitely trained myself to emotionally and mentally handle, having to turn on that switch, at any time. Um, for instance, right before this interview today, I was just answering emails and doing a lot of office busy work, and then I have learned how to flip the switch on and be able to communicate and network with people. Network with people like you, network with, potential people who could partner with me or potentially invest with me in the future. So it is very, very important that, you kind of find a happy medium between, giving time to yourself, but also giving time to your office work and also giving time to networking. And I think when you have too much networking or too much public exposure or too much office work or too much rest time and leisure activity, that's kind of where you run into a problem. So you kind of need to learn how to manage your time properly and and kind of schedule your life in a way that there's a dedicated time and place to talk with people and to bounce ideas off each other, and then there's a dedicated time and place to get to work. And I'll tell you, about a year ago, oh, not about a year, yeah, about coming up on 1 year now, I actually partnered with Amazon to publish a book called the TPC Rule, and TPC stands for Teacher, Partner, and Client. And the reason I published this book and wrote it was because a lot of people were asking me, how I did it as a college student, managing networking, managing office work, managing, keeping up a healthy lifestyle with exercise and things like that. They want to know how I manage my time properly. And the TPC role kind of teaches one to make sure that when they are networking with people, when they are planning to partner with people, when they are thinking about taking a job or hiring somebody, they are working with people who can either teach them something, can either partner with them on something, or can either be a customer or client. So that's kind of why I published that book. So I guess the entire book is kind of a very long answer to your question, but in a short sense, yeah, that's kind of my philosophy.
Um, you know, in your experience, uh, what are the first steps that you can give like that, for someone who want to try to launch his own microphone, who don't have, a lot of funds aside, but can sometimes put something there and there, to start their own fund. Which are the
Well,
steps? What are the principal steps that you advise?
Well, I think it all starts with the business plan. I know that's a very generic thing to say, but it is true. I think it starts with the business plan. In business, you need to, lay out the framework for the business that you're going to build, um, before you actually go ahead and build it. You can't, just like in construction, you can't build a house without a solid foundation, right? So you need to kind of lay the foundation and the framework, get quotes from third-party vendors and companies that you're going to need to use to build this micro fund, and see how much it's going to cost and see how much time it's going to take. Because if you work, I know a lot of people in corporate America that work 50, 60 hours a week. If you're working 50, 60 hours a week, and starting your business is going to require you more than 20, 25 hours a week to build, for an entire year, that might not work out. So you kind of got to weigh your options there and weigh, your funds. How much do you have? If you're starting from zero, I would say the most important thing to do from a personal financial level and to build that, is to register, your articles of incorporation. Go to your Department of State website, and or at least in the States, this is how you do this. In Europe, for listeners all around the world, this may be different, but I'm sure the governments all around the world have their same process or a similar process. But you want to get your articles of incorporation down. You want to get your tax information down. You want to talk to somebody I know a lot of the states here we have something called the SBDC. It's a Small Business Development Center. I know there's a lot of free pro bono resources that small business startups can use. You want to get those things down. Then if you're looking to build financial assets for your company, I say investing in something like an S&P Spider portfolio index fund is good because exponentially your assets will grow. Make sure you have those dividends set to reinvest in themselves and things like that. Obviously, speak with a financial advisor about it. But I think starting with index funds and letting your funds grow until you have the opportunity, the financial opportunity to pursue an endeavor. But I'll tell you, you really can start your own business, and not necessarily a micro fund, but just your own small business. For about, in the States, for about $500 between the articles of incorporation and the tax purposes. Work hard, save up that money, invest it where need be, uh, you know, consult with, other professionals and even friends around you that have started businesses. They can definitely be a good asset. So I think that's the plan, laying the groundwork before building the tower, if that makes sense.
So, Trevor, I really want to ask you this question. Like, how do you personally define money? Because from the beginning we talk about money and technology and all of that. So, I really want to know, how do you define money for you? Is it a tool? Is it a burden?
I would say for me, it's a tool because without money, uh, our job can't be done. Obviously, these companies that become huge are not not built on $0 and volunteer work. These to start a big company, you need some sort of assets. I'm not saying you need a ton of them, but you need assets. I think mentally where people go wrong is when they start thinking of money as a burden, when they start thinking, oh, I need money. And obviously everybody needs money to survive and things like that. But if you start looking, at money as, hey, when I get this money, I am going to succeed and I'm going to become the next big thing. If you look at money that way as a tool and you look, wow, look at the beautiful things that I'm going to be able to build with these assets. If you look at money that way instead of looking at it out as, hey, I need this money to, get out of a hole. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the world are in debt. That is definitely a very unfortunate thing. Even companies are in debt all around the world. But if you even for the individuals in debt, look at money as kind of like a tool to get out of the hole. If you're in a ditch, look at money as the ladder that's going to get you out of the ditch, but also look at money as another ladder that's going to take you higher. So I think I personally look at money as a tool. I'm grateful for the money I make, but I'm also grateful for the money that I can invest. Because when you invest, in yourself, I really think that you are putting the determination and grit on yourself. That's how you become something big. So money is definitely for me personally a tool, and I think it should be a tool for everybody, not looked at as a burden.
Hmm. And what is your point of view, on the paycheck dependency? So
Mhm.
paycheck dependency is when someone is dependent on his paycheck every month, and I think the American says living paycheck to paycheck.
Well, I think with paycheck dependency specifically, I think that the more dependent you get on your salary, the further you go from creating something yourself. And I think, this world is built on free enterprise. And I think free enterprise is a very, very beautiful thing. But you can't have free enterprise uh, or a successful free enterprise economy without having individuals out there who want to be financially independent, from their employer. And I think that everybody wants notability, everybody wants credit for what they do. And truly, I think the only way you can get credit for the work that you do without giving credit, inherently to somebody else is to build your own business. So, I mean, I think, there's a lot of people that are in a lot of different situations. And if you want to sit back and relax in life, definitely depend on a paycheck. I think paycheck, dependency, working for large corporate companies is fantastic for people that just want to live mediocre lives. But if you want to, make something, and truly change the world and impact the lives of others, you have to think outside the box of just the realm of, loop of applying for jobs and applying for promotions and things like that. Um, I think that there is room for people to start their own businesses even while they are relying on a paycheck. It takes grit, it takes effort, but I think there is room for that. But there's also other external factors. I mean, I know that people have families. I mean, I don't have a family of my own, but I know there are people from single income families that rely on a paycheck to put food on the table for their kids. So I think that's something important to take into account. But really, if you want to live a mediocre life and you want to relax and you want an average but decently lavish lifestyle, paycheck dependency may be okay. But if you really want to change the world and you want to make an impact, paycheck dependency is not something that you can do that way, in my opinion. And there are even people who are not paycheck dependent that start nonprofit, organizations and take bare minimum salaries and barely get by, financially, and they're not relying on paycheck dependency and they're turning away a very lavish lifestyle just for the opportunity to change the world. And I think that's a very commendable thing for those nonprofit companies and what they do. But yeah, that's how I see it. If you want to change the world, you got to start your own business and you got to have the grit and the mindset and the faith to do it for sure.
Do you think nowadays and in the years to come, is it really feasible, to only have a one job, one paycheck?
I don't think so. I think, I don't know, and speaking for households, I mean, single income households are now few and far between, with a lot of inflation and things like that in our economy. Um, I think, whether it's, one person working two jobs to put food on the table for their kids or, both parents working, I think that, you do need multiple streams of income. And that's why, go back, if you work a 40 hour week corporate job, not necessarily saying that I've worked that 40-hour week corporate job, but I've, managed, being a student athlete and, a full load of class schedules, an undergraduate and a 20 hour a week cybersecurity job and starting this company. I mean, my schedule is packed, but those who are working, 40 hours a week, I don't think there's any reason that they can't start another, start another company on their own and not necessarily, allocate a ton of time and a ton of resources to it, whether it be, financially or hiring employees, but, they can kind of start, they call them, side gigs, side professions, where they can get that extra flow of income. And I think people that are doing that, that are, relying on their base pay, relying on their paycheck dependency, in case things go south, but also those that are starting their own firms and starting their own companies and having that extra flow of passive income coming through to them. I think that's really good. I know, somebody who lives near me in Pittsburgh. He's a, project manager for a construction company, but he also on the side acquires and rents out rental properties in the East Pittsburgh area. And for him, that's been a huge stream of passive income coming in. So just because he's working, a full-time job with a dependent paycheck every month, um, he also kind of has that other stream of income coming in. So, I think it depends also where you're living in the country. On the West Coast, it's extremely expensive, to live out in a state like California, and even in the North, New England states, Pennsylvania, Boston, Massachusetts, states like that. It's extremely expensive. So, I think having two flows of income is important.
What is the most important financial lesson you've learned from your father that you intend to pass down to your own kids?
So I would say the most important financial lesson I've learned from my father is probably to always, always, always invest. You don't become wealthy without investing your money. Saving money just doesn't cut it. If you want to, become wealthy, and have build generational wealth that you can pass down for generations, you need to be investing, whether it's in the stock market, whether it's in your own business, whether it's in something. You can't let money just sit there and be stagnant. So when that paycheck comes in, maybe take the bare minimum percent you need for an emergency fund, put it aside to a savings account, but the rest of that has to be invested. and don't make stupid purchases, right? I think a lot of people, they get that first big time corporate job or they're starting to make a ton of money and, oh, I'm going to go out and buy a fancy sports car. That money you're going to take for a fancy sports car, settle down, buy something nice, maybe buy yourself a BMW or Mercedes or a nice car like that, but don't go crazy with it. And kind of take that money and make sure you're investing it. Like I said, whether it's in yourself, whether it's in index funds. But the biggest lesson you always taught me is that if you want to build wealth, invest, do not save.
So, what is your message, to all the people that may be our age or your age? Uh, you know, what is your message to these people who can feel that financial success is out of reach nowadays in our economy? Uh, because I've seen a lot of students that can't even get a first job because AI just ripped off all the first jobs, the junior jobs, and they don't have idea how to build that wealth in this new kind of economy that we're witnessing. So what is your touch on that? 'Cause I want to know how would you do if you were in that position to actually build wealth.
Mhm. Well, I mean, for people, that are trying to, at a young age, that are trying to, garner success, I think that a lot of the older individuals uh, in this world right now, they might, look down on young people as if they don't have the expertise to create something big. And I think that that's the exact opposite. I think young people are giving a fresh perspective on what needs to happen in our economy, what businesses need to be developed, and obviously, I mean, as every young generation comes through and becomes older, they are the next big thing. So for young people right now that say financial success is out of reach, I simply say it isn't. And even if it starts with not creating your own business, but going and getting that job, don't be defeated. I've known people that have applied to 200 and even 300 jobs and haven't gotten any, and then they come back with the dream job that falls on their plate, and this is exactly what they want, and it works out. It will work out for you if you are determined, if you put your head down. For young people who are still in school specifically, stay ahead of your grades. But also don't let the classroom be a burden to you in the sense that it's important to get out and network with people. Networking and calling up the hiring manager for a job you applied for and speaking face to face and learning those key communication skills are that's exactly how you're going to end up being successful. It's less about what you know and more about who you know, from what I've learned. uh, so yeah, I think it's important, like I said, to communicate with those key individuals in your life, and for of an individual who's of faith, trusting in God. There is a process for you. You have a plan. You have a mission here on this earth, and you got to fulfill it by just working your heart out. Talking to everybody, shaking hands, getting business cards, and reaching out to people, and kind of being the squeaky wheel. My mom always tells me a quote. It's the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Um, so the ones that get cared for and nurtured in society are the ones that are loud and vocal about what they want in life. So share what you want, and don't stop until you get it. Don't be defeated.
What is one book every employee should read?
I'll give you my biased opinion on this, and then my unbiased opinion on it. Very interesting answers you're probably going to hear here. My biased opinion is the TPC rule. Um, that's the book that I wrote. I think it really is influential for you, with communication skills. And then my unbiased opinion is the Bible. And I think even if you're not an individual of faith, I think there's a lot of important lessons you can learn from the stories in the Bible. But definitely, diving into those two texts, I think are the most important. Unique answer for sure, but those two for sure. Not putting, by the way, not putting my book anywhere near the Bible. Not don't want to say that for sure, but yes, those two books. I guess you could
Okay.
call it. It's the bit my book. You could call it the Business and Communication Bible if you want to call it that. If you want to call it that, but yes.
So yeah, so that's really interesting. So, what would you say, to someone who have like a $100 a month to invest? In which thing he can invest with $100?
Well, I'll tell you personally, and it all kind of comes back to networking communication skills. The best $100 investment I think I ever made, I'm still not sure where it's going to go, is putting yourself. For me, it was actually a round of golf. I invested, so to speak, but I purchased a round of golf with my friend at his friend's or my friend's country club up the road, and I happened to run into on the first tee box. I ran into the vice president of a Fortune 500 major financial institution that everybody's heard of. Don't want to say the name because I don't want to, out his privacy or anything like that. But I think the best investments you can make under $100 are ones where you can put yourself in a situation to meet and network with individuals who are going to take you to the next level. So, like I said, for me, best investment I ever made was a round of golf because I think that relationship with this individual is going to take me very far. But for others, going, even to small one-day conferences and networking events. I mean, I know there's a great platform called Eventbrite, and you can go on Eventbrite and look up, business networking events near me. And so a lot of those, ticket prices are under $100. You pay that, and you get to go and network with individuals who want to start the next big thing, and they might offer a expertise that you needed, and you might offer an expertise that they needed to join forces and create something beautiful.
What can you say to some people like who sometimes are a little bit shy to network, like they don't want to bother people. So when sending message or sending another message, looks like you are bothering, you are running behind something. What is the best attitude to have with network?
Well, with networking, you have to learn how to to get comfortable. If you are networking with somebody and somebody's taking the time out of their day to talk to you, and you're taking the time out of your day to talk to them, you nor they are too good to speak to the other person. So it's important to note that when you're networking with people, especially at happy hour events and stuff, just be loose. Talk to them like you've known them your entire life, and that's how connections are made. If you're unfamiliar or a little bit uncomfortable or shy with networking, you can always ask your family members and friends. Say, hey, listen, I'm going to this networking event in New York City next week, and I'm going to be meeting with a lot of executives at companies. Can we go out to lunch, and can you pretend to be a big business executive and let me kind of pitch my idea to you and talk to you back and forth? I think kind of role playing in that sense is very important, that you get an idea of what it's like before going into it. And with anything, preparation is key and practice is key. But the more you practice anything, the more you're going to get good at it. So if you're uncomfortable and you're shy, ask your friends and relatives, to pretend to be, the CEO of this company, and then kind of pitch your idea and pretend that you're talking to them. And then as you go into those conversations, you'll be more comfortable. I'll tell you, I'm young, but I have been on my fair share of, interviews like this with other, talk show hosts. And I'll say from the first one I ever did to this one, I feel that I have gotten better at communicating, with the host and answering their questions thoroughly. So really, I just feel like that the more you do anything, the better it's going to work out for you. But definitely practice with your friends and family, and exposure therapy is huge. Sometimes just diving face first into it. It was like driving. I'll tell you a funny story. When I first, got my permit to drive here in the States, there is this large highway. It's called the Lincoln Highway. It goes across the entire country. And the Department of Transportation Center where I got my permit is right outside this major freeway. And normally when you're starting to drive, you want to go on back roads, and then slow at first. My mom said, "Okay, pull onto US 30," and I was like, "Whoa, wait a second, we're getting on a freeway. I just got my permit." She's like, "Exposure therapy. You will get used to it. You just got to put yourself out there." So I feel like that was kind of an important life lesson that applies to me. And when I'm meeting new people, I just jump right into the conversations. Hello, how are you? My name is Trevor Wilson, managing partner of Wilson Venture Capital. It's great to meet you. And you just got to automatically get into those conversations and dive into it. Don't hesitate.
That's really interesting. Like learn by doing and doing again, again, again. Repeat it until you do it better. That's
Hmm.
the only way
Absolutely.
to learn really fast. Yeah, a good story. I just wanted to ask you another question, but this question is a little out of the box. It's like uh, what is your take on economic differences between people? So why most of the people complain about the economic situations, and for you is a more a question of not knowing what to do with their paycheck, so how
Hmm.
to invest, how themselves, and also which kind of thing to buy, to create wealth, or is it a problem of society? So what is your take on that? Because most of people think it's the system that
Hmm.
made them become like this.
Well, I'll tell you. Unfortunately, in the states here, we have a great political system, but there's a lot of divide in what's going on. We have different states, that are controlled by liberal politicians and conservative politicians, and they both have, they both have their valid points here and there about what to do with the economy. Um, but I feel as if there is a lot of polarization because with more and more online communication, somebody from Mississippi can be talking to somebody from California like they're sitting right next to each other. So in the state of Mississippi, cost of living is very affordable. In the state of California, it's very expensive right now. So I feel like that's where a lot of clashing heads can cause. People think that, hey, well, I can afford to live just fine, and then somebody in the exact same age range, exact same profession, is saying, oh, I can't afford this lifestyle at all. So I feel like politically, I feel like that's where people get the systematic divide from because they're thinking, we live in the same country. How are our economic situations so diverse? So I think that's where a lot of the confusion and conflict comes from. However, I think unfortunately too, and I've observed this with people all around the world. Obviously, the people that are the most successful that I talk to don't do this, but I feel like there is a lot of um, sulking behavior in this country, especially with my young generation. They think that everybody is out in the world to get them, and that everybody's out to bring them down. And I think it comes with a mental attitude mindset. And there are a lot of people in different countries that are persecuted, unfortunately, but for the most part around the world, I mean, everybody has a pretty fair opportunity to build a business, and you can go one of two ways if you come from a low income household. Even you can either sit there and sulk about your situation, you can feel sorry for yourself, and you can complain, or you can zip your mouth and go out and build something special. And I think that's the difference between the people that are successful and that aren't complaining about their situation and the ones that are. I mean, if you have time to go on Reddit forums and complain about your economic situation, the time it took you to log in and type that long message and send it and then respond to comments and things like that, the time it took you, I mean, you could have been building a business, you could have been talking to a financial advisor, you could have been working and saving up money to invest in yourself, invest in your future. So I think it all comes back to mindset. But there definitely is that political divide, but I don't think it comes back to as important as how important mindset is. Mindset is extremely, extremely important. Those who are determined and those who don't feel sorry for themselves and those who don't sulk are the ones that are going to become successful. And the ones that do will just unfortunately fall behind. But that's just the way it is. So I think mental health, mental awareness, mental well being, and mental determination and grit are very, very important.
Oh, that's really good words for you, and I think that's really, really important, to put it out there because I listen it quite a lot in the investment world, in the personal investment world. So, Trevor, we are at the end of the podcast, so I let you the microphone to give some words, to end this session.
I just want to say thank you so much. My first time on a show with a guest that's not here from the United States, that's from Europe. This has been a very very pleasant experience, and hopefully, the word about your new website and platform that you're building and your show, and hopefully my company, can also benefit from this. But most importantly, the guests listen to this show, can benefit from, the wise words of advice we both decided to share with them today. But yes, I really, really appreciate you having me on. If you're interested in my company, you can visit wilsonvencap.com. That's WILSONVENCAP.com. And I just really appreciate this opportunity. It's been a blessing to be able to talk with you today. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much, Trevor. It's really nice to have you here and nice to talk with you. So we will be not going. We will not end the session right now. We just end it for the people who are watching us. So you and me, we stay in the studio.
Okay.
So
Yes, for
thank
sure.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to Trevor and I. It's been really great, to have him here and to have this conversation, which is really refreshing, on life, venture capital, business, because I really find that his point of view is really unique. His perspective is unique, and he's kind of the big digital landlord of storefront investments. So that's really great to have him here. So for the ones who are really interested by his story, by his business, so don't hesitate, like he said, to be in contact, to be in touch, and we'll be following what he's doing with a good attention. So thank you for listening to us, and have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye bye.